Our next guest is a self-described storm chaser. Rich Hamel's website, bostonstormchaser.com, is full of videos like this one of an EF2 tornado bearing down on Bennington, Kansas. And on his homepage, Rich introduces himself by writing, "Despite living in Massachusetts, about as far from chase country as you can get in the USA, I get out to the plains and chase storms as often as I can." Well, yesterday, Rich didn't have to go too terribly far to chase a storm. As you know, an EF2 tornado touched down in Revere, tearing a 2-mile path of destruction. Now, block by block, yard by yard, residents and officials are picking up the pieces. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured, but at least 13 houses have been deemed unfit to live in, including Jerry Iovana's home on Revere Beach Parkway.
I have to just do what's next and what's in front of me, one step at a time. I'm not happy that I can't live in my house. That was really hard, leaving last night.
Well, this tornado caught just about everyone off guard. So why wasn't there more warning? As mentioned, Rich Hamel is here. In addition to leading storm chasing tours, he's a meteorologist. And we say thank you very much for being here with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I have to hear your story about where you were yesterday. Were you lucky enough to get out there and chase?
I was not, and even if I were lucky enough to get out, I would probably never go to Revere or anywhere downtown to try chasing.
Right.
But I was at our office, which is right in Government Center, and sitting in a meeting with a bunch of other people as the storm that produced the tornado rolled right over our office, and watched the torrential rain and lightning and thunder, and you know, we weren't expecting anything like a tornado to happen, but it was you know, amazing that it happened less than 5 miles later.
So what you're saying is that there was nothing about the storm that led you to believe that ultimately that was going to be a tornado?
Not particularly. There was some indication of rotation in the storm, but a lot of times, you know, a lot of storms will spin, and you need some kind of a trigger to get them to actually tornado if they have that potential. And you know, I think in this case what happened was it collided probably with the maritime air mass and sea breeze, where you've got wind coming in from the east, and that caused enough of a spin to get it to produce the tornado for a couple of minutes.
Well, you know, actually that's very interesting, because that was in Suffolk County. First one that's been on record in Suffolk County. You would think that the scenario that you just described would happen more often.
Well, a lot of times you have a countering effect, which is the sea air is less unstable than the other air, so it'll actually tend to dampen storms as they get to the coast. And a lot of times we see these squall lines come in the summer where they're severe out in the Berkshires, and you know, as they get closer to the city, they just slowly fade away into nothing. And I live halfway in between, and half the time we don't even get the rain part of the storms.
Right. This was an EF2 tornado. Explain to everyone what that means, because there are different categories of tornado.
That's right. So the EF scale, or Enhanced Fujita scale, is a revised version of the original Fujita scale, which assesses the damage potential, or the wind speed of a tornado based on the damage survey after the fact. So you can't look at a tornado as it's going on and say, oh, that's an EF2. It's all dependent on what the reviewers see after.
So, Rich, what do they see? I mean, how did they know so quickly that was an EF2?
Yeah, well, because it hit something is actually the reason. You know, a lot of tornadoes, we think, are actually more severe than they appear, but they just plow across an open field out in the Central Plains or something, and there's no real damage to assess sometimes. But in this case, unfortunately, we had structural damage, roof damage, and that allows the people who are trained in that to make the assessment.
I've actually heard people say you can look at the leaves on a tree and make the determination as to whether it was a tornado or not, the way they were ripped up. Is that true? Well,
I mean, there are certain characteristics of tornado damage. For example, anyone who saw the damage path of the Springfield tornado would see that a lot of the trees were all sawed off at about 7 feet tall, and in some cases debarked. The bark's ripped right off the trees. That's sort of a classic tornado signature, whereas another common wind event, like a microburst that we have around here, tends to hit like a bomb and flatten everything out.
Now, yesterday, that came through at about 9:30. Most people didn't even know there was an issue till almost 10 o'clock yesterday morning.
That's right.
That's concerning. Why is it that, you know, no one could see this coming here? Yeah,
well, first of all, the Storm Prediction Center had not even a slight risk in New England yesterday. They had what's called a C-text, which is the, you know, maybe something might happen, but keep your eyes out.
They probably have that every day, right?
Yeah, a lot of the days anyway.
Right.
But you know, in New England, commonly we get these in the summer high humidity days, so the storms are very very wet, a lot of rain. And, you know, for example, yesterday we had, after the fact, unfortunately, but a tornado warning was issued at the same time as a flash flood warning. That's pretty rare that you'll have a storm that's raining that hard, that fast, that it will cause flash flooding and have a tornado hidden in the rain where nobody could see it.
Right. Well, we were lucky because we didn't have any major injuries, which is amazing when you have a storm that comes through like that. And while there was some structural damage, it certainly could have been worse. We went out to the site today and we chatted with, there was an engineer out there, and he was telling us why he thought there wasn't as much structural damage as there could have been. Let's listen in for a sec.
Compared to other regions like the Midwest, I think that we have a better building code and enforcement. So building have a better chance of, resisting, less intense tornadoes such as F1 or F2.
Being a Midwesterner, I know what he's talking about. I really do, because I think out here a lot of the structures are set up for the possibility of hurricane, and you certainly don't have that out in the Midwest.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about, was this an anomaly? Or is there something happening in the atmosphere and we're going to see more and more tornadoes in this part of the country?
Well, New England gets about 8 to 10 tornadoes a year, and I think we're on roughly that same pace this year, although it just so happens we had the one yesterday and another on Sunday in Connecticut. So I don't think we've seen a great increase there. Nationally, the last 3 years have actually been fairly inactive, and this year may go down as the least active tornado season since they've been recording it. So it's hard to say. The years where it appears that there's a lot more activity and the numbers are higher, a lot of that can be attributed to the great number of storm spotters that are out now that weren't in the past, and also better radar and things like that. We say no tornado goes undetected these days. And if you look at the high numbers, a lot of times it's the weaker tornadoes that are much more prevalent than they used to be, rather than the severe ones.
So what do you think? Are we in the clear now? Can you predict for us?
Well, for the next couple of days, I think. After that, I don't know.
Well, it really is interesting. Again, being somebody from the Midwest, you expect them there, but you sure don't expect it in Revere, Massachusetts.
That's right. Yep.
All right, Rich Hamel, great to have you with us.
Thanks for
Thank you,
having me.
sir.